So let's talk a little bit about my love-hate relationship with Chase Bliss audio pedals. It is a spoiler alert here. It is, of course, far more love than anything else. I'm a huge fan of what Chase Bliss does. I'm sitting here with 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sitting here with 5 of their pedals. That alone should tell you something about how much I dig the sounds that come out of these things. Lately, I have built a new stereo pedal board, really digging the stereo sound. I'm using the Walrus Audio stereo canvas, so I have a compact, tourable stereo output that I can also sum to mono for monitoring through an amp on stage and send a stereo pair to the house with this huge sound to put reverbs through, to put time-based effects through, to put modulation through, my harmonizer, all of this stuff. More and more of the board is creeping into the stereo signal chain, and there are very few pedals left on it that are mono. Here's the old Mood that I used forever, Chase Bliss Mood. That is in mono. I recently upgraded, got the Mood Mark II, this purple guy right here sitting on the top of the board. And forever, my reverb situation has been the Dark World, the now discontinued, sadly discontinued Dark World. It was always this. It was always this pedal, and this pedal has such a bonus feature to it in that it had the dark side of the Dark World. Now, it was my understanding that this side of the pedal, the dark side of the pedal, had come from the Cooper Effects, the original Generation Loss. That was a collaboration between Cooper Effects and Chase Bliss. So when moving to stereo, what I wanted to do was get that sound, but spread out left and right. I was like, oh, Generation Loss. So I do some research. There's Generation Loss V1 and Generation Loss V2 or Mark II. This guy right here, the Generation Loss Mark II. I cannot tell you how excited I was for this to arrive, to get it into my pedal setup, to hear that degraded tape sound with the all-important key factor of noise. That is the main thing I think that sets apart the dark side of the Dark World, that kind of warbly tape sound from almost anything else I've ever heard in a pedal. And here's me thinking like, oh, this is well worth the mega investment to get this pedal because it does all of that. And then you have different EQ modes from different devices and just a whole, like a much bigger spectrum of tape sounds from the 70s and the 80s. This is going to be mega, and it's in stereo. My sound is going to be super wide, super huge. This is it. This is the solution. Well, you can tell from the fact that the board is completely finished and this thing isn't on it. Not only is this thing not on it, it's for sale on my website right now. It's brand new. It comes with, obviously, with the original box, the stickers, the plastic bag, the instruction manual, everything. It's spanking brand new. It is cleaner than you could possibly imagine. Still has every element of it is intact and in mint condition. So this is available on my website, link below. I don't know if you want me to sign it or sign the box or something like that. The link is below in the description of the video. All that to say, it's not on the pedal board, and we're going to talk about why, and I guess make a plea, make an appeal, which who knows if it's even possible because of why the Dark World is now discontinued due to components not meeting code in Europe or some weird thing. Who knows if it's even possible, but my plea after you check out the sound samples I'm going to give you in this video is to try and find a way to recreate the dark side of the Dark World, but actually, not kind of close, almost there, just stop before the finish line, but actually recreate what this pedal can do and recreate it in stereo. Maybe make it just a dedicated unit that just has this side and is a stereo pedal and is a single pedal, maybe even a micro pedal. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get into some sound samples. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So to me, this is the genius of this side, the dark side of the Dark World pedal from Chase Bliss. It's this sound. It's the tape warbles, but it's also the noise which is affected by the clean signal coming in. Remember that. It's going to be really important when we go look at the Generation Loss Mark II in a second. And that's just the pedal on its own. The decay is beautiful, and I've got it maxed out. There are no real fine tuning here. I do have the trails on, but I've just got it maxed out. And we're getting that sound, like some real space just on its own. And the noise is kind of nostalgic, comforting, cascading. And when you put that through a reverb, which I wish I could do, but the reverb side of that pedal is broken, sadly. When you put that through a reverb, it's even bigger. It's even more expressive. The trail and the tail of the sound is even more beautiful. But just the fact that it feels like there's space in the sound without any reverb is really huge to me. That's the thing that I love about that sound. Now we'll get rid of that and we'll go to the generation loss, which is creating tape. In fact, let's just make a little example of the fact that you can hear underneath the noise, you can hear the warble, the warping of the tape. And the noise kind of cascades over it. Okay, remember that. When we go to the generation loss, right away, we've got the warble. That's not in question here. It is emulating old tape. It's doing it in such a way that you can choose different EQs from different devices that break up a little bit there. It's like a dictaphone and little tape machines, reel to reel, all kinds of things. I think there are 11 presets on there. Don't get me wrong, they sound incredible. They are such a phenomenal recreation of what those sounds are. They are instant nostalgia. What they are not, sadly, as you can hear, like what's missing, the noise is missing, right? The thing that I think makes it the dark side of the Dark World sparkle. As beautiful as these tape sounds are, the sparkle is missing. Now, it has a toggle switch for noise. We can turn noise on. There are two different levels of it. There it is. There's our noise. But the noise is completely unaffected by the signal coming into. It's just on. If I don't play, the noise continues. And you can have louder noise, quieter noise. There are some hidden settings when you press the two switches on together that you can adjust the noise of the level of the noise, but it just doesn't do what the dark side of the Dark World does. And all the things I can find that talk about that, the people that have written about it, even on Chase Bliss's website themselves, they say that the generation loss is where the dark side of the Dark World came from, and it appears not to be true. Now, I don't have a generation loss Mark I. Maybe that sound can be recreated in there. I'm also not sure if the GL Mark I is stereo, but there's even a classic mode, which basically says you can have the generation loss Mark I. You do have the generation loss Mark I in this pedal. It still didn't create that noise that is affected by the dry signal. So what to do? Well, I wish I had the kind of pedal budget that would allow me just to be like, well, okay, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. I still love the pedal, and I'd just keep it. And at some point, I'm absolutely going to want some tape emulation, and I'm probably going to want some specific, old machines and the sound of those old machines, and I'd love to have it in a compact pedal like that and for it to be stereo. Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, I don't have the budget to do that. That's why it's up for sale. That's why it had to go, because something else had to come in that was stereo, that does get close to making some of the noise. And let me show you what that is. So you may have noticed this pink pedal right here that's been in the foreground of the entire video. This is the Chase Bliss Lossy. It is the 90s answer, the more digital, early years of the internet answer to the Generation Loss Mark II. If Generation Loss Mark II is the 70s and the 80s tape degradation, Lossy is a bad Skype call or AOL online or any of those things if you're nostalgic from the late 90s to the early 2000s when the internet was first being a thing. Does it do exactly what the Dark Side of the Dark World does? Absolutely not. But it is, I realize, something that gets a little closer in terms of being able to make those artifacts, albeit digital now, not tape. It can make those artifacts and it's a little more controllable. So let's take a basic sound. It's kind of breaking it up a little bit. And there's a filter on here. And let's just say I'm very much in the beginning stages of exploring it. But it was cool enough and got me to make music and got me to think musical thoughts quick enough for it to go on the board for an upcoming trip to Europe. So here it is. You have some pretty simple controls. There's a reverb on it, which I'm not using because I have a reverb later on in the chain. Just the pedal on its own. It's not as cascading. It's not as bright. There are certain things I want to do to it to maybe change the EQ, what I'm feeding into it. There's lots still to experiment with, but it does provide me with something close to the warble and the flutter, like the wow and the flutter that this side of the Generation Loss Mark II does, and also some controllable artifacts and these loss packets, and how much failure I add to it, which provides a little more, some more gaps in the sound. But much like the Dark Side of the Dark World, what really made that one bloom was putting it through a reverb. And now we're in stereo with all of this stuff. When I do put that through a reverb, and that tail feels amazing. Again, so much still to explore, but you can see how we are perhaps solving the issue. It's not a straight swap, of course, and it still makes my love-hate relationship with Chase Bliss pedals exist, because there is still a bit of imbalance there in terms of what I'm slightly frustrated. I have got out of a pedal from that company and what I am sadly no longer able to. At least not in stereo. You know, I did think about, okay, maybe I'll put the Dark World back on the board and that'll just be the last mono thing in the chain and everything after that will be stereo. But I really want to be able to put other stuff through that sound. If I put my harmonizer in and put the Lossy on here, you'll get an idea. It's just such a musical option to add texture to sounds late in the signal chain. All of these things that I have up front, octaves and subharmonics and harmonizers and all that kind of stuff, is something I really want to be able to push through all of the stereo elements, the modulation, the time-based effects into the loopers, out to the house. That's how I like my signal chain. And if I put the Dark World, which is a mono pedal, into the pedal board, I would be compromising on that in a big way. So everything's a little bit of a compromise, and maybe this is less of a love-hate relationship with Chase Bliss and more of a love letter and a plea to them. to you if you're an employee and are listening. It would just be an amazing benefit for musicians. I just happen to be a bass player, but I think musicians the world over to have that cascading, warbled, wow, flutter, noise kind of option in a pedal. You guys, Chase Bliss makes some of the most insanely high quality sounds there are, and to have tasted it and be like, oh, it's available in mono. Sadly not anymore because the pedal's discontinued, but it was available. You probably ought to get these used on Reverb or whatever. It's there, like it's so close. But to be able to cascade that whole thing in stereo, not just from putting it into a reverb later on, would be an amazing benefit. And who knows, but perhaps it'd be a big seller as well. I'd definitely happily promote it free of charge. And there are a few other things I've been experimenting with. Of course, I have my Frantibit here from Iron Ether. If I turn down the volume and do some sample rate or some bit crushing sample rate reduction, I do start to get that kind of cascading saturation. But that's, again, coming from a mono pedal way ahead in the signal chain. There's very little I can put before that, and I definitely can't put my harmonizer stuff before that. So it's kind of an option if I want to get that sound on some mono sounds, but when I really want to get the big things, that big, wide, all kinds of things there. I added the Mood Mark II, the stereo, into that sound. I know I'm going to get questions about, hey, what reverb are you using now? It's the Delverb by Universal Audio, and the HX Stomp is what is providing all the harmonizer stuff. A few other things to note on this board are I now have two loopers, two stereo loopers, so I can use one as a main sort of recording device and then sample into a later one, clear out the first one, create way more layers like that. So to have two loopers in stereo on the board, huge benefit there. I have some octave stuff up front, as in the classic kind of OC2 sound, but this is coming from the vintage bass octave. I also have my subharmonic, my Mantic Hulk. And when you throw that through a reverb with a little it's a nice big stereo image. You can definitely do some damage. And then one of the kind of wild card pedals that I love is the Iron Ether Frantibit, because it is kind of, it can be all kinds of weirdness from a ring mod to straight up just sample rate reduction, something I love to put the harmonizer through. Gives it some texture. So there you go. For everyone who I know is going to leave questions, comments about, hey, what are you using? What else is in the board? Now you know. I've got the Vertex Boost up front. Underneath, I have the JHS color box as my preamp, also very close to the front of the signal chain. And like I said before, the Walrus Audio Canvas Stereo DI/line isolator all the way in the back. So that's my fix. That's my way around it. Again, if Chase Bliss could recreate that side of the Dark World pedal and put it in a single box, I think the world would be a better place for it. I'm sad to have to let this go, but I had to get these other things in to sort of solve the problem. It is brand new. This Generation Loss Mark II is available for sale on my website, as well as a brand new Red Panda Tensor. I had a bit of a meltdown with this pedal many years ago. Again, box, papers, still in the plastic bag inside. I tried it out. I really dug it this time around. Thought it was incredibly musical, but the real estate on the board, I just didn't have the space to have that and the Mood Mark II. And the Mood Mark II kind of did some of the things the Red Panda does in terms of being a micro looper, pitch shifting stuff, and it also did some other stuff that I really liked as well. So I've got to pick one, and I picked the Chase Bliss Mood Mark II. So there's a brand new Red Panda Tensor and a brand new Generation Loss Mark II on my website right now. Links in the description. Appreciate you sticking around. See ya.